Once men built themselves from discipline, they understood that comfort corrupts faster than failure. That a man who runs from pain also runs from growth. Today we live surrounded by noise and abundance, yet the spirit of man is empty. We have traded strength for convenience, mastery for distraction. The modern man looks for balance, but what he really wants is escape. He wants results without repetition, peace without struggle, purpose without sacrifice. He negotiates with his own weakness. I'll start tomorrow. I deserve a break. It's not the right time. Each small surrender reshapes him until he no longer recognizes himself. And still he wonders why he feels restless, why nothing holds weight anymore. It is because his life has no form. A sword without form cannot cut. A man without form cannot stand. Discipline gives form. It is the structure that holds when everything else collapses. It does not care how you feel. It only asks that you show up. The weak call this obsession. The strong call it freedom. Freedom from impulse. Freedom from noise. Freedom from the endless need to feel good. You were not born to chase comfort. You were born to carry weight and remain still, to choose order when the world begs for chaos. Remember this, discipline is not there to please you, it is there to prepare you. The code of iron begins here. Chapter 1. In ancient Sparta, boys were not taught to be strong. They were taught to stop asking for ease. One of them was different, younger than the rest, quiet, quick to hesitate. His weakness was common. He wanted to become a warrior without enduring what warriors endure. At dawn he trained, but only until it hurt. Then he stopped. He called it listening to his body. He thought it was wisdom. It was comfort in disguise. His instructor watched in silence. He had seen this before, talent without endurance, ambition without form. One morning, when the boy dropped his shield to rest again, the instructor spoke. "You're not tired. You're negotiating." The boy looked up, confused. "Negotiating with what?" "With pain," the instructor said. "And every time you do, it learns your language." That day, the lesson changed. No more drills. The instructor told him to hold a single stance, knees bent, shield raised, until sunset. There were no rewards, no applause, only silence and the sound of his own breath. His arms shook, his legs burned, his mind screamed, but he stayed. Not because he wanted to, because there was nothing left to bargain with. When the sun finally sank, he fell to the ground. The instructor approached and said, "Now you've learned the first law of strength. What you can't endure today will rule you tomorrow." The next morning, the boy returned, not stronger yet, but clearer. He had stopped asking how long it would take. He only asked what needed to be done. That is the beginning of discipline, when the question changes from "why must I suffer" to "what must I do now?" Every man will face this moment, in the gym, in business, in silence at 3 in the morning, the point where the body whispers enough. Most listen, a few don't. The ones who don't, they enter the forge. They burn, they break, and something inside them hardens. This is where strength begins. Not in victory, but in the refusal to negotiate. Weeks passed. The boy stayed in the camp long after others quit. He still wasn't strong, but he no longer waited for strength to begin. One morning, the instructor called him forward. No shouting, no ceremony. He simply said, "Watch." He raised his spear and performed a single strike. Perfect alignment. Nothing wasted, nothing forced. Then he turned to the boy. "Do it exactly as I did." Not almost, exactly. The boy tried. The movement was clumsy. Again, 100 times until the spear grew heavy in his hands. "Enough," he gasped. The instructor shook his head. "You stop when the form stops you, not when you feel like it." That night, the boy couldn't sleep. His hands trembled from exhaustion, but for the first time, he felt peace. He had followed form. The next day, the same ritual. The day after, the same again. No new drills, no progress charts, no praise. Just the repetition of one movement until thought dissolved and only precision remained. The instructor told him, "A warrior without form is a slave to his feelings." Form is discipline made visible. Weeks turned into months. The stance that once broke him became effortless. His breath matched the rhythm of the strike. His mind quieted. One morning, the instructor watched silently as the boy trained. When the strike ended, the instructor nodded once. "You no longer imitate," he said. "The form has entered you. Now you can begin to build." The boy didn't understand fully, but he bowed his head. That moment was the birth of structure, the discovery that freedom is hidden inside repetition. Most men search for motivation. They want to feel inspired before they act. The old warrior knew the opposite truth. Action creates the state you seek. Form first, feeling later, always, because the man who waits for emotion to move him will never move far. The boy didn't become stronger that day. He became dependable, and that is rarer than strength. Chapter 3. Dawn. Cold air. Stone under bare feet. The boy rises before the others. No command, no trumpet, only the memory of the form. He repeats it alone. Strike. Breathe. Step. Reset. Again. Every repetition eats away at hesitation. Every morning, the distance between thought and action grows smaller. Pain becomes ordinary. The sound of effort becomes background noise. What once felt unbearable now simply is. This is how the forge works, not through fire or noise, but through the quiet erosion of weakness. The body adapts first, then the mind follows. Days blur into one another. Movement, breath, stillness. And then, one morning, something changes. The instructor calls out a command, but before the words are finished, the boy is already moving. The body knows. The form executes itself. For a brief moment, he feels no effort, no thought, only motion. That is the first glimpse of mastery, when doing replaces deciding. The instructor watches and says quietly, "Now you understand. Discipline is not about force. It's about form surviving emotion. Modern men will never see this. They change the plan at the first discomfort, chasing novelty like it were progress. They forget that the forge needs consistency, not variety. Steel is shaped by repetition, not excitement. A scientist once said that after 1,000 correct repetitions, the movement becomes part of the body's automatic memory. The warrior never read that study, he simply lived it. Chapter 4. When the lesson was complete, the instructor called the boy to stand before the fire. The camp was silent. The others trained. Only the crackle of flame filled the air. "You've learned to obey form," the instructor said. "Now you must understand the law behind it." He drew 3 lines in the sand with the tip of his spear. "These are the pillars of the code. Break them, and everything you've built will fall. First, duty before desire. The body wants comfort. The mind invents reasons, but duty stands above both. Do what must be done, even when every part of you resists it. Second, form over feeling. A man ruled by feeling is a leaf in the wind. Discipline demands structure. You move because the form requires it, not because the mood allows it. Third, silence over noise. Words are cheap, complaints cheaper. The world is loud, but strength grows in quiet places. Speak less, do more, observe everything. The boy listened still, trying to remember every word. The instructor continued. These laws are simple. That's why most ignore them. They want mystery, shortcuts, secrets, but there is nothing beyond this. He gestured to the fire. The forge doesn't argue with the metal. It burns and the metal yields. Discipline works the same way. The boy nodded, not out of understanding, but out of recognition. The words matched something he already felt, the quiet certainty that order is freedom. That night, as he lay on the cold ground, he repeated the 3 laws under his breath until sleep took him. Duty before desire, form over feeling, silence over noise. In the years to come, men would call this the code of iron. But for him, it was simply the way forward, a compass in a world that bends. Chapter 5. Seasons passed. The boy became a man. His movements lost urgency. His silence gained weight. The instructor watched him from a distance. There was nothing left to correct. No need for praise, no need for words. The man still trained each morning. Not for reward, not for progress, simply because it was time to train. One dawn, the instructor approached and asked, "Why do you still practice?" The man answered, "Because I am not finished." The instructor nodded once. "Then you understand." There was no more ceremony after that. No declarations of mastery, no final lesson. The forge had done its work. He had become a man who no longer needed motivation. His actions no longer asked for meaning. They were meaning. He woke. He trained. He ate in silence. He taught others what he had once resisted. Discipline had stopped feeling like effort. It had become identity. That is the final transformation, when the practice no longer requires belief, because belief has become practice. In a world obsessed with speed, this kind of stillness looks strange. People ask for the secret. There isn't one. Strength is repetition. Peace is form. Freedom is duty. The boy who once negotiated with pain no longer needed to fight himself. He had become the structure he once resisted. The code had entered him quietly, not as words, but as rhythm. When others broke under pressure, he stood still. Not harder, just steadier. That is what discipline truly is, not the absence of weakness, but the presence of order. And from that order, all strength is born. The code of iron begins and ends here in silence.